barium solubilization occur in specific conditions in soils, and one of these conditions is acidic soils. So barium is not believed to possess any nutritional benefits to animal and plants, but we have a report about chronic exposure to elevated levels of barium in humans, and it may cause several harmful effects in humans, such as vomiting, diarrhea, cardiac arrhythmia, and even death if not treated. And the majority of published data is about barium levels in drinking water supplies. So this research was performed in USA. And barium contamination in soil are reported mainly as a result of production of soaps, explosives, fire extinguishers, meaning drying fluids, and even as insecticides. So the most common natural occurring minerals of barium associated with barium are barite, hollandite, and also witherite. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about Brazil nuts. So as you probably know, Brazil nuts is a native plant from the Amazon region, from the Amazon rainforest. And the nuts are a good source of vitamins, proteins, and also several essential elements such as selenium. However, we have some studies reporting high levels of barium, which is not good. So we have some evidence suggesting that we have in the Amazon basin a mineral called hollandite, and this mineral presents a high concentration of barium. And there is a lack of information reporting barium in the Amazon basin, not only in the Amazon basin, but I can say that in the whole country. We have a few studies about barium in soils and Brazil nuts. So for those who are less familiar with the Brazil nuts, this is the Brazil nut tree. The plant is usually higher and taller than most plants in the Amazon rainforest. So here we have the fruits, also called ouriços. So in order to get the nuts ready to eat, we need to break the pods and also break the shells. So we're going to have these beautiful nuts and we can eat. So this map illustrates the natural distribution of Brazilian nuts in the Amazon region. So the plant is originally found growing along the Amazon River. So we can find here in this part of Amazon, but we can also find this plant growing in some other countries such as Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, and also Guyana. So I had two main objectives with this research. So first, I want to investigate the concentrations of barium in the Brazil nuts growing in different sites. And secondly, investigate the background concentration of barium in soils from the Amazon region. So I want you to understand how these two variables are related to each other and how the environmental, climatic, and also epidemiologic conditions is going to reflect a higher or lower concentration of barium in the Brazil nuts. So this map illustrates the sites where I collected the samples. I basically collected the samples from 5 different states in the Amazon region. So we have here heterogeneous conditions of soil and climate and even vegetation. So I'm not going deep into the details about the methodology I used to determine selenium in the Brazil nuts and soil. Just a brief description. The barium concentration in Brazil nuts was performed using digestion. We used 0.5 gram of each material in triplicate and 6 milliliters of nitric and perchloric acid in the ratio 2:1, and we use a digester block here. And for the soil samples, the digestion procedure, we use the US EPA standard 3051A and also in triplicate. So the certified reference material used was tomato leaves for the Brazil nuts and Montana 2 soil for the soil samples. And we also got a really great recovery rate for both materials. And the barium analysis was performed using inductive coupled plasma with optical emission spectrometry. So let's go to the results and discussion. So this graph illustrates the barium concentration in the Brazil nuts. So we can see here there is a wide variation, not only among the different sites studied, but also within each site studied. We can realize here that in the site Chapuri from Acre, we have concentrations ranging from almost 0 to more than 1,000 milligram per kilogram of barium, so this is really high. And we can also realize a great difference even when we compare two sites from the same state. We have here the site Anori from the Amazonas state and Aurona Farm in the Amazonas state. So here we have the barium concentration in soils. We basically can observe here a similar behavior as we could see for the barium concentration in Brazilian nuts. And here we can see that the same sites where we got higher concentrations of barium in the Brazilian nuts, we got here in the soil. And here we have for the two sites from the state of Acre, we can realize here that the concentrations of barium are decreasing from the topsoil to the deepest layers. And we can see here that we have really high concentration. But let's compare with the national legislation. So in Brazil, we have CONAMA, is an environmental council which provides some information about the prevention level and investigation level for some trace elements in soils. So these values are also called the quality reference values for soils. So when we compare here these values for the whole country, the prevention level is defined as 150 ppm and the investigation level 300 ppm. So we can realize here that the median concentration for barium in the site from Chapuri is higher than both levels, and the median concentration for the two sites from the state of Acre and the site from Amazonas, Anori, the median values are higher than the prevention levels. So the point I want to make here is to bring a discussion about how these national levels are representative of this real soil conditions, of the real pedogenic and environmental conditions of the soils we have in the Amazon region. So I suggest we must perform future research in order to update these national values and for the region, for the Amazon region. So I also try to see how the two variables are correlated in the topsoil, the second layer, the third layer. So here we have a linear regression, and I can assume here that we got a fairly strong relationship between barium in Brazil nuts and barium in soil. So we can see here that these two variables are strongly related. And I also studied the Pearson correlation, and here I focus on the topsoil. So I studied the correlation between barium concentration in Brazil nuts. I don't know if you can see here, it's not very good. Barium concentration in Brazil nuts, barium concentration in the topsoil, and pH, organic matter. Here is and here we have the clay, organic matter and cation exchange capacity. Sorry. So I observed positive correlation between barium in Brazil nuts and also barium in soil and cation exchange capacity. Negative correlation between barium in Brazil nuts and organic matter and clay. And I also found a strong negative correlation between barium in soil and clay. So I assume that the accumulation of barium in Brazil nuts is possibly more influenced by soil mineralogy and barium retention in soil, which is the case of the clay. We found a negative correlation and significant correlation for the clay, between clay and barium in Brazil nuts and barium in soil. And we didn't find any significant correlation between these two variables and the soil pH. So in the Amazon region we have a very diverse a very diverse difference in soil mineralogy. So, for example, in the state of Amazon, we have soils with predominant kaolinite. In soils from the central part of Amazon, we have iron and aluminum oxides. So, just bringing back the discussion about the levels of barium in Brazil nuts. So, the usual recommendation of barium in Brazil nuts, the usual recommendation of barium is 1 nut per day. So people usually eat 1 nut per day in order to supply enough selenium. But we didn't know about barium. How much barium we are ingesting when we eat 1 nut per day. So for the site Chapuri, we almost reached the limit of ingestion based on the suggestion, the recommendation by US EPA in 2005. So here we almost reach toxic levels, but I would like to remember you that these are the total concentrations of barium for each stage on average. We still don't know how much is bioaccessible and how much is bioavailable for the human organism. So this is topic for future research on Brazil nuts. So if you eat Brazil nuts from the sites Aruna, Mato Grosso, Amapá, and Roraima, it is apparently not harmful for you as long as you do not eat too many Brazil nuts. So conclusions, Brazil nut samples with the highest barium concentrations were those from the sites Chapuri in the state of Acre and Anorim in the state of Amazonas, and both are native areas. And these concentrations accumulated in the Brazil nuts are in accordance with the high values also found in the respective soils. We also found a wide variation of barium among the different sites, and these reflect the great heterogeneity in soil conditions around the Amazon basin. We still didn't study the influence from the plant itself, so we have variables such as age. Age is a variable that could influence the higher or lower concentration of barium in Brazil nuts, and also the genotypic variation, because we have different populations around the Amazon basin, and they are very different from each other. I also found reasonable relationship between barium concentration in Brazil nuts and concentration of barium in soil and clay fraction in topsoil. So again, I would like to highlight the hypothesis that we have that we may have different soils in terms of mineralogy, pedogenetic conditions, and also environmental conditions in these areas. So I would like to thank my university, Federal University of Lavras, Soil Science Department, and also the institutions that provide resources for my research, CAPES, NPK, and also FAPEMI. So thanks for your attention. If you have any question, feel free to ask me.
Nice picture.
Thank you.
So, is there a question for you?
Do you have many different species of this Brazilian nut plant, or is it the same species grown?
No, this is the same species, but I have studied a little bit about the genotypic variation. So it seems that we have a really a great diversity of Brazil nuts around the Amazon region, because they are very different in the size of the fruit, in the shape of the fruit, in the weight of the fruit. So I assume that we have a really wide variation in terms of genetics.
Maybe following up on that, if you see relatively large genital plasticity, could that also explain the part of the differences in selenium uptake? If you see some plants maybe.
Sorry, can you repeat please?
Then could that also explain some of the difference in selenium uptake that you see between?
Yes, of course, yes. Yes, we need someone else to study the genetics of Brazilian nuts, because some of them may have a higher capability to absorb selenium and barium, and other lesser capability to absorb selenium and barium.
What do you think about the bioavailability?
Bioavailability?
Bioavailability.
So this is what I'm going to study in my next exchange.
But you can guess if the different sites have different.
Yes, I guess
benefit?
different sites gonna have different bioavailability and bioaccessibility, but I still need to study on that topic. But I believe for barium, the values for bioaccessibility and bioavailability are gonna be lower because I always say to my friends that when I go to my hometown, I usually eat a lot of Brazil nuts from that place where I showed you higher concentrations. So I'm still alive, so I believe the bioaccessibility is low because the barium it must be in an insoluble form in the Brazil nuts. I know there may be other elements influencing this low bioaccessibility.
One more. Did you measure calcium in the nuts as well? Or not?
Sorry.
You measured the concentration of barium.
Yes.
I'm just wondering whether the ratio of calcium to barium changes.
Calcium?
Yeah.
No, I still don't know how calcium is related to those elements.
Well,
Yeah, I need to analyze that.
plants have a really funny mechanism. Sometimes they take proxy for one element for the other, and it's worth checking calcium to barium concentration.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you very much.
End of the session. Transition of